Good people, what is going on? Another episode of the All Go Podcast. I'm your host Desmond. Thanks for tuning in. Want to talk about Texas A&M. They play Alabama this week, and that game is at Alabama. Obviously, a lot was made of the Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher kind of media back and forth. Saban had mentioned that, he said that Texas A&M bought all of their players with NIL deals, and Jimbo Fisher immediately called a press conference and basically just decided to, go off on Nick Saban, which is fine. It's right. But the interesting part is I don't think, number one, Nick Saban should have said that, but I also don't think that Nick Saban is wrong either, because if you look at the trend of Texas A&M, their recruiting classes, they had an historic recruiting class just this past season, the past recruiting cycle. And before that, they've had some good classes, but never number one, never elite classes of a, top 5 class. So you wonder what made them come there. Was it because we're not even off of the COVID year, because the COVID year they were 9-1, I believe. The only loss they had that year was to Alabama in the SEC only schedule that they had, and I believe they finished the last regular season poll at number 5, so they were just outside of the playoff. But the next year they went back to kind of same old Texas A&M, which is 4 losses, 8-4 is the norm. And it's interesting that coming off of a historic recruiting class that you look this way. And I do understand that, true freshmen more often than not are not going to be huge impacts and huge game changers on your team. But you telling me none of those? You telling me a historically great class can't make any type of impact? And even if they do, here's the thing. In general, A&M doesn't look like a great team. And I look at the head coach, because that's what everything comes back to, is the head man. You look at, teams that are struggling. Iowa football, they are having just unprecedented issues on offense. And people, number one, yes, we'll look at the offensive coordinator, which is Brian Ferentz, who is Kirk Ferentz's son. But it ultimately is on Kirk. You need to do something, right? And it's the same thing at Texas A&M. But the difficult part is the guy who needs to do something is also the head coach. He is the problem. This offense is pretty bad. I was watching Late Kick here on YouTube, Josh Pate, and he mentioned basically this is a 2013, 2014 offense that Jimbo Fisher is running, and he refuses to make any changes. He refuses to update the offense. It's just, when you look at offensive football now, it's rare that you see a team that's successful offensively that is just a power run team, I formation, and we're just going to run the football. It's so rare to see that, because that's a really hard thing to do. You need to have essentially superior athletes top to bottom, or at least from tackle to tackle, to be able to run that type of offense and be successful. And I think when you play offensive football that way, you give yourself zero margin for error. So your defense has to be elite. You can't ever turn the ball over, because, at your max, you're probably only going to score 21 points, maybe. And it's just it's tough, because where do you go from here if you're Texas A&M? You can't fire him. I think Jimbo has a more than $50 million. I think it's about $50 million buyout. To put context on it, the 4 coaches who were fired, 4 or 5, Paul Christ, Scott Frost, I believe Herm, who am I missing? Whatever. Those 2 coaches alone, their buyouts collectively is not $50 million. I believe it's $26 million. I think Paul Christ was at 11 and Frost was $15 million. $50 million buyout. So Jimbo's not going anywhere. So that for Texas A&M, this is just life. So unless Jimbo has the foresight, the wherewithal, the awareness to say, I'm part of the problem, Texas A&M isn't going anywhere. They're going to be who they are. And I don't foresee Jimbo being that type of person. But what I would say is Jimbo needs to hire himself a really good offensive coordinator. And he needs to pass off those reins. And he needs to move to kind of CEO mode where he just oversees the operation, both of his coordinators, and go from there. But until that happens, I don't know what is going to happen with Texas A&M. But I don't see them getting to the SEC championship, winning at a high level. You're going to have upsets here and there, like they, upset Alabama last year, but consistently winning more than 8 games, 10 games, 11 games, I just don't see it happening. Let me know your thoughts. I'm curious. Appreciate it. Peace.